Okay. Okay. Also, watch this. Look at this. I think I got an intro.
Ooh,
Well,
okay.
okay. Don't throw me off. You're gonna throw me off. You're gonna make me nervous. Okay,
Oh,
ready?
I won't say anything else.
Don't
I'll
say
stop
anything.
talking.
Okay,
We'll be
cool.
fine.
I'm gonna smack you. All right, here we go. Welcome back to Movie Whales Marathon Series. I was thinking Marathon Series would work because it's an M. We are
Okay.
beginning our journey, I don't know, through the Planet of the Apes films. I'm half your
Mhm.
host, Andrew. I'm joined by.
The other half,
God
Mac.
damn it. Can you ever just say your name? In
Do you
my
want me
head.
to just my name? That's it. That's all I'll say.
When
No.
it's like I'm Andrew and I'm Mac, but you've always got like an extra
Mac.
whatever. We're getting argumentative. Anyway, in my head it was a lot smoother. We'll work on it. But yes, we're in our Movie Whales marathon series, Planet of the Apes. The first one, directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, came out March 27th, 1968. All good things, fun stuff. Love this movie, but Mac has never seen it, I believe.
No, I have
So,
not.
I want to hear your thoughts. We're not going to like recap these because if you're listening to these, you've seen them.
True. Okay, so I loved this. Like
I
I loved it.
was so
And
scared.
I mean, I think it's kind of a giveaway. Like I think if you like Star Trek, you'll like this. Um
Interesting. Go on.
Not necessarily the stories are the same in environment or even really in attitude, but the
Vibe.
storytelling structure is very much the same.
Mhm.
Like where you get introduced to the situation kind of step by step, you're allowed to kind of explore it. It has something to say about the world at large. Like it felt
There's a space
reminiscent of that.
element,
Yeah.
even. Yeah, it's not. I mean,
There is a space
It's
element.
not super subtle.
No. And okay, I got I think I kind of knew the twist before the
It's
end
kind
of
of
the
hard to
film.
miss it at this point. They've been
Yeah.
around for. It's like that's one of the most iconic twists ever is the Statue of Liberty thing.
Mhm.
Like that. That's
And it's like the
before.
last 30 seconds of the film, like,
Yeah.
respect for holding it out.
Uh huh.
Even though what I'm about to say kinda contradicts that, I don't know that they set that twist up very well. Because in the beginning, they do a lot of emphasis on the fact that they're gonna come back to a very, very far future Earth, and when they crash, the only thing they really say is, "We don't know where we are, we were supposed to be on Earth, we don't recognize the planet." And maybe I've just seen too much sci-fi, but I went, "That's Earth?"
See, I think I don't recall. I had always interpreted they were not going to Earth. They were going to another planet. That was always the goal.
They were on a return mission, I'm pretty sure is what the beginning of the movie says. Like, they had been out, and they were coming back to Earth.
Because I don't because they say that Stuart was meant to be the new Eve. They were specifically going to a new planet.
I thought they
I
were on a return
I might be
mission.
like forgetting the dialogue, but I had always interpreted it, and I thought I understood they because by the time they go to sleep, the
Mhm.
time is already like they're already several decades beyond when they
Right.
left. And
Mhm.
they knew they weren't going to go back. They like wanted to contact Earth, like to see where they were at, but they can't because they
Maybe
go
I
for too
missed
long.
something. I thought they were going back.
No, I don't think that was
My
ever the
bad.
goal was to go back. They were specifically trying to go to a new planet, but because he says that they're on a planet orbiting a star in the constellation Orion. They knew they were trying to get somewhere out there, but because they
Mhm.
crashed and everything went haywire, they don't know which star it is.
Okay. Okay, I interpreted that as just a full-on joke in the sense that you're like, "I need a specific location," and so he gave a specific location, but it was, like,
Ah,
not where they were. Um,
gotcha. No, he meant that in earnest. Like, yeah, we're
yeah.
some planet around this star in this constellation. We're as far away as any human has ever been. That Heston vibe.
Okay. Okay. So
Anyway,
I
go
missed
on.
that. That's embarrassing. But
Well, no, no. Put a pin in that because there is
Mhm.
something there. Like one of the other big twists of this movie. I've seen this movie like 15 times. Never understood it until like this time watching it. So just
Okay.
hold on to that.
Okay. Um, but I liked a lot of what this movie was. Like, I feel like the story was well constructed, like really well constructed. I did not realize that it was going to be so much, I don't know if based is the right word, but maybe inspired by the time travel.
The
Like the
time
time
machine?
machine?
Yeah.
Yeah, the time machine, because it's very similar in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of ways.
Especially the
And yet it's
sequel,
its
which we'll get
own,
to.
yeah, it's its own interpretation to a large extent, but like it's got humans traveling to the far, far future of Earth. They encounter far, far future humans who have kind of de-evolved, and then a species that kind of has control over them. The guy has to try and teach language
Mm-hmm.
to the humans, and it has something to say about society, even though what the two are saying is pretty different, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I didn't realize it was going to be so inspired by that. It was kind of
It's
cool to
also
see.
got a lot of Animal Farm in it as well. There's even a direct
Yeah.
reference to it in the movie.
Yeah, I heard the reference to Orwell. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this person is well read. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's layered. It's a layered movie, and I think for 1968, the effects are still pretty good. I don't
honestly,
know.
I thought the same.
I don't know how a child nowadays would feel about it in our world of
Mhm.
CGI, but like Cornelius, Zira, Dr. Zaius, the makeup is amazing. So good. Also, speaking of which, I love all those actors. They all crush it. I love
Mhm.
Cornelius and Zira
Mhm.
so much. I love their
I
voices.
love those
Their
two.
expressions
Yeah.
through the makeup is so perfect. And Cornelius's character I find the most interesting and the most fun. He is so torn between doing everything by the book and doing everything like the heart and the brain thing is like going on with him
Mhm.
so badly because
Mhm.
he wants the truth and he wants legitimacy, but he also wants to not be thrown in jail. So I think in some ways though it almost comes across as inconsistent. It's
A
hard.
little
I
bit,
think you could argue one or the other that
but
it's
I
either.
think it's an understandable inconsistency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anyone who has found a belief or something that goes against what they've been taught to understand has gone through that same kind of wishy-washy phase where they're like, this is something that I believe, but I've encountered evidence to the opposite. And my beliefs tell me that I should pursue the truth,
Mm-hmm.
but they're contradictory to what the truth seems to be saying. And so there's a lot of flipping back and forth, especially when there's a threat over your head, right?
Right.
So,
It's a little weird. Like
Mhm.
his first reaction to Taylor is like very believable. Then you find out later this guy has done archaeological expeditions and has this crazy
Right.
theory in which if that was true, when Taylor shows up, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be great for my
Right.
work and my research. Like
Yeah.
none of that. None of that. There's like no indication of that until much, much later. Which is why I think you could make an argument it's just inconsistent. But I think
Mhm.
either the actor or something like they pull it off where it does just feel very genuine and conflicted rather than inconsistent.
Well, and I think that the conversations between Zira and Cornelius are the best parts of the films.
Easily.
Like, the 2 that we've seen so far, and it's great that they, as a couple, are allowed to have these conversations where they're kind of arguing back and forth on a point, and at the end, even if they don't totally agree with each other, they still are kind of presenting, like, a united front with each
Mm-hmm.
other,
Mm-hmm.
which is such a really, like, out of all the films to represent, like, a healthy, respected relationship
Healthy couple.
2 academics.
Uh-huh.
Like, I did not expect
The academic
Planet of the Apes.
chimpanzees. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, but it really is kinda like, wow, so they can write healthy relationships in this time period, they just need to
Yeah.
put on a bunch of monkey makeup first.
Yep. Yeah, they really are. They are the shining light of the series for sure.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
yeah, I mean I find Zero of course I think is like maybe the best character of the first movie. She kind of drives it. Obviously, she's
Yeah,
like our
yeah.
protagonist ape. But I like her interactions with everybody, with Cornelius,
Mhm.
with Taylor, and
Taylor.
with Dr. Zaius. Dr. Zaius is one I've always been very conflicted on, and the confliction
Yeah,
gets worse in the next one, but we'll keep it to this one,
yeah.
where it's hard to tell what motivates him more, like fear and security, or just power. It's
Mhm.
really hard to tell because it's I don't know like he's supposed to be Napoleon of Animal Farm, if you will, in a way,
Right.
but also he's got something else to him. like
He's got a
when
level of sincerity to him where
right,
he
because
seems
like
to genuinely believe what he's
yeah,
got going on.
if you've grown up hearing the stories about man the way he has, about him being a destroyer and all this stuff, and actually being aware of the evidence of it, I don't know. I think there was another version of this potentially where you do understand Dr. Zaius a lot more. I don't think he
Mhm.
gets enough really to show, because he just keeps stabbing everybody in the back, and he's
Yeah.
such a pill, and I don't know. You
That
could
is something
have.
that I thought was interesting is the writing of that conflict,
Mm-hmm,
because I think it's clear the movie has a side, that it picks and sticks with, but there's, like, a consequence to that side
mm-hmm.
where, throughout most of the film, you're like, "This religious guy is just in the way and causing problems, and is probably just power hungry, and so he won't let, science advance." And at the end of the film, you find out he is trying to keep, like, this dangerous secret, where, if it got out or if it, if men was allowed to populate in great numbers, then he believes that it could lead to the downfall of their society. So it adds this like surprise kind of twist at the end that is backed up then by the idea that this is Earth
That yeah,
that man
exactly. So
destroyed,
yeah, I mean, in the
right?
end, technically,
Mhm.
Dr. Zaius ends up being correct. He was
Yeah.
right the whole time.
Mhm.
It's just it's not portrayed super well. I just
Yeah.
I wish in a way that someone other than Zira believed Taylor. Like, cause like the
Mm.
conflict between Taylor and Zaius in his office, where he's like, "Yeah, I know you're not one of their experiments. You're some dude from beyond the Forbidden Zone." Like, well, then there's no real understanding here. Like this could have been, I think, a stronger moment. I like when he calls him Taylor and Taylor thanks him for calling him Taylor, because like he's acknowledging him not as an equal but as still as an individual.
An individual,
Yeah, and
yeah.
there is something there. But his the court scene where the one orangutan is like, "Why aren't all apes made equal? And why doesn't man have a soul? Huh? See, he doesn't know, so he's this, that, or the other." Like, that's just ridiculousness and dogma, and at this point, stupidity
Mhm.
in Taylor's perspective.
Mhm.
But then that moment in the office, I think that could have been something more. But Zaius is doing the same thing. He's like, "Oh, I see, even your lies have truth in them. Fort Wayne, that means you're from a fort." Like, and like I think as an audience member, I end up just like smacking my head, or it's like, come on,
Mm.
you want this guy to be the smart one. Have
Mhm.
him like
Mhm.
have him do like give him an edge, something. Put him beyond it. Like, he doesn't understand time travel. He doesn't understand flight, but there's something different about Taylor. The words he uses, this, that, or the other. I don't know, something. I don't want to go back and
Mhm.
like I said, it's a great, like you said, it's a great movie and I love it. But it's just there's a couple of those things that could have been cultivated a little more, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall the writing in this movie is fantastic. Like the way that it is paced, the way that most of the time the dialogue goes and all that stuff. I just think that the and I'm not sure how to say this without maybe a further study of those scenes, but I feel like potentially a bias against religion colored some of those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in any way that's, like, super critical of the film, because that is kind of one of the themes of the thing. It's like it's intentionally trying to critique, religion and the power that the church can have over a society.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I don't know that that person approached religion with a I don't wanna say understanding perspective, but, like, with a genuine interest to understand, maybe is
Mm-hmm.
kind of the way to go. Because the lawgiver and stuff is very clearly based on, like, a Christian church or belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Monotheistic, built in their image, all that stuff.
Right.
But they don't actually explain, like, the origin of that belief system
Mm-hmm.
at all, and maybe that's something we get to in later films, and I don't know that they had time for it in this film necessarily, but the lack of an origin for the belief is kind of a question mark for me, because
Mm-hmm.
the story that starts the belief, it holds all the core ideas of the beliefs in it, of the religion in it. So I kind of want to know who was the lawgiver,
Right. That
what did
could.
he have to
Right.
say,
See,
like that sort
I
of thing.
know where these go as far as like who is quote unquote the first ape, and it's not the same thing. So I would argue that in this movie and in the next one, that's probably done a little bit by design, so they have plausible deniability. Because you watch this, and it's of course it's implied in some of the terminology, the church that we see. It's like, okay, this is kind of based on a Christian thing. But like, if you write it all down, you could argue it could be any one of these things. Like, they don't specifically align the same stories or the same lessons that the Bible has necessarily. It's just there's like visual similarities.
Their scripture is based off the New King James Version of the Bible.
It is very similar.
There are some quotes that are almost straight from the Bible. And I think it's pretty heavily implied there's a creationism versus evolution argument thing going on here as well.
Yeah.
All that to say, I don't think any of that is the actual theories and beliefs of the church and the science isn't actually at odds per se in the movie. It's the ability to have conversations about it. That's the conflict in the film. Like, they just want to be able to talk about things. They want to be able to explore options. And that's what the church is not allowing, which is what causes the problems in the film.
Dr. Zaius as well being head of science and head of church. That is, of course, a big ol' maybe no that I think the film is saying. It's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have both jobs. Like, just saying. Which, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of hard to tell as well which one he actually leans more into, because he does, and again in the second one we see later on, he does clearly believe in the lawgiver, but he also knows that man was around first. So where do you draw the line in the dogma, Dr. Zaius? And I think that would have been really cool to explore.
Because according to the 29th scroll or whatever.
Oh, girl, I don't know exactly what that scroll number was.
I just remember it. The lawgiver himself, according to the scrolls, knew about man,
right,
and the previous iteration of sentient life on the planet, and he has decided in the belief system that he is creating, the leaders of the church should also be the leaders of science, so that people or apes in the future don't learn about man. And I want to know why that choice was made, because it feels like learning about how foolish man was and destroying things maybe would have kept them from destroying things. But
I think that's actually more that was the keeper of the church, whatever his title is. That was their decision, not the lawgiver, because the quote is just beware the beast man. It's not, hey, Mr. Priest man, don't tell anyone about man. That was Dr. Zaius and others like him. That was their choice to keep society ignorant of the history. And I think we are going to get into, well, why? But I mean, the reason is so the twist makes sense and the twist is fun at the end of the movie.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, that's a rabbit hole we could keep going down. I do, if we want to get nitpicky here for a second, the nitpick hour. If I were Taylor, it's not this kind of movie. If I were Taylor, I'd be surprised they spoke English.
Yeah, same.
I'd be surprised they wrote the same. Like, I mean, he's communicating with writing. It makes me wonder, because they have like all this iconography on their clothes, and it's really cool. And like, when you're a kid and you don't quite pay attention, you don't catch it, and you maybe watch Star Trek or Twilight Zone every now and then, you're like, ooh, alien language. Like, well, no, because he's writing to them and they understand it, so that's just fun shapes.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and chalk that up to they needed to make a movie in a fun way,
and they had to communicate.
And so, yeah they had to communicate. And, I mean, I'm sure they thought about it, because this movie is so heavily based on the time machine, and the time machine does have a language barrier. He has to learn how to communicate with the people from the future.
Right.
But I think they chose English dialogue just to simplify things, and then they didn't talk about it because pointing it out would almost make it worse.
Right, of course.
We're just gonna gloss over the fact that we all understand each other.
Right. But yeah, I mean, we're nitpicking and it's fun to like speculate about stuff, but like I do love the movie. Charleston Heston, I do think is a little bit over the top sometimes, but I think it works because the main characters otherwise are the silent lady. I think probably the 1st example of the born sexy yesterday trope, which not glad
Nova.
not glad that continues necessarily, but
Yeah.
but then the other ones are these intellectual little stinkers, you know? Like so you got to have your razzy rough and tumble cowboy adventurous dude.
Well, and I think actually this film is very interesting from a history of film perspective as well,
Mm-hmm.
because not only are the effects pretty impressive, so to the point where they kind of hold up today, like obviously we can see that they're masks, but they still look
They
good.
look
Um,
good.
Yeah, but, like, I think the filmography and the style of directing and acting in this is a very interesting bridge between, like, sort of the classic 50s, 60s filming to what we now kind of know today, and
Mm-hmm.
that would make sense for the time period, but, like, I mean, if you watch The Time Traveler, and I'm forgetting when it was filmed now exactly, but it was filmed pretty early on, and it has this really dramatic theater style of acting where you're kind of almost shouting at the camera and there's big fanfares that pop up out of nowhere and you're cutting pretty straight from person to person to event to event. And this one, it has some of that. It has some of the big musical flares, it has some of the dramatic acting that just kind of like screams at the sky, and it has some of like the direct, cutting. But it
Mm-hmm.
also has some of the more modern film like making
Yeah.
techniques that we see today. And it's interesting to see the two work so well together, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't feel like 2 different movies, those different scenes. They feel like it's the same movie, but it is if you're paying attention, you can see that there's a different style that's kinda being mixed in here and potentially even being pioneered in these films.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll have to
I
pay
don't know for
attention.
sure because I don't know enough
Yeah.
about that era this
I
era of film,
I
but
do think
yeah.
I don't know how I'm not super good at like looking at it from that perspective necessarily, but I do think you have a point just cuz again, it's an old movie and it doesn't feel like that. Like
Yeah.
I think they do a lot really well to make it just feel quote unquote like a movie. Like
Mhm.
you don't see a lot of the seams as it were. If you
Yeah.
really look, sometimes you can, but like the sets for the most part work, the environment for the most part works, the land that they travel across for the most part works. It works. It works.
Mhm.
Also the music. Love the music. I think it's iconic
Music's good.
and it's
Mhm.
very noticeable. Like it's like a specific vibe. Um I did just remember another nitpick though that I wanted to discuss with you. The Forbidden Zone.
Yes.
Nothing is out there.
Yes.
So why do we have scarecrows? They don't deter
I was
anything.
assuming that was a territory thing.
But they don't.
And obviously they don't think anything survives in the Forbidden Zone, but then I mean we learned in the later films that they don't totally actually rule that out. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was entirely changed simply by Taylor showing up because I think that's still pretty kept, I guess,
Right.
secret kind of thing.
Ah.
So I'm gonna go with like because the moment I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that is territory marking." I don't
Right.
that was like what the people thought of when they were putting it up, but that is a warning to stay away. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Let's go check it out." And I was like, "I don't know if you should be doing that."
Yeah. I don't know because like I think so I think there's one argument you could make that it's meant to deter man, but it's not because man are
No.
clearly in their
Mhm.
territory. I honestly think it's straight up. It's just Twilight Zone stuff. That's meant to be our first
Mm.
example of aliens. That's meant to spook us, the audience member. There's really not much more about it because they don't imply anything else in any of the movies we have about other societies of apes beyond all the traveling they do. But the traveling they do often seems to be going to like military camps, something like that. So I don't know. It's kind of fun to nitpick. Oh, so again, the thing that I didn't get until this viewing.
Yes.
The
Please let me
big
not be the only embarrassed
yes.
one.
The big checkmate to Dr. Zaius in the cave is the doll and how the doll
Mhm.
speaks.
Mhm.
I did not realize. I thought the big fuck you was the doll could speak, therefore it's more advanced. this older thing is more advanced than what you have, and it's clearly been made by man, so men were here first and they were more advanced. I did not realize until this viewing that in their world, men don't speak, so there'd be no reason to make a doll that speaks. I felt so stupid. As a child, I thought it was just a technological thing. I thought it was like, look at how old this advanced technology is. That's the point. I never made that connection. Never. Until Taylor said again, would an ape make a human doll that talks? And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, man, that hurts. That really hurts.
That's funny. I mean, I get it, because, I mean, again, they don't directly, like, lay out the argument, and they do that with a lot of the stuff in this film, but I did get that pretty quickly. At first, when it spoke, I just kind of went, oh, that's sad, because it's sad to see, like, a tragic doll, and then everyone got quiet and paid attention to it, and I went, oh, wait, that's significant.
That's not supposed to happen in this world.
Yeah, a human is speaking. And
nope,
I don't know more about that, actually. I'm going to assume that they get to it in the later films, because it is a big question mark that they actually mention in this first film.
What?
Like, humans being mute seems to be selective. According to Dr. Zira, they have all the physical capabilities that they need to speak, but they don't, like, grunt. They're totally silent. And that is kind of weird to me, to have no explanation about that.
The next movie kind of screws with that idea, doesn't it? And then I don't know. So of these, the only one I've not seen all the way through is the very last one of these original ones. So I don't know if that's explored. I know what the explanation is in the new ones.
Okay.
But again, that kind of screws with your theories. I don't think there is one consistent answer, so that'll be fun to keep track of.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know. Any other... yes, go on.
This is a general note. I was surprised by the, I guess, level of advancement of the ape society.
The medicine, especially?
Yeah, it's weird, because they're all living in essentially tribal huts. It's a pretty well organized tribal hut situation, but that's kind of, they're like, the city is not very big according to what we see. It's like,
but they have a museum, and they have a church, and a zoo.
They have a church. They do lobotomies. They, like, have guns and photography.
I know. Okay, actually,
they don't have, but they have, like, horses.
Right.
And, like, it's kind of interesting to see a hodgepodge of these things, which I think I'm not complaining about. I think it makes sense from a sort of, like, it's a different society. They're evolving in the footsteps of another society. It would be a little out of whack like that. But it was something that I did not expect. I thought it would be more consistent just from a movie narrative perspective, but I think it kind of worked.
It's a little, because, like, if they have photography, that means there's an ape somewhere in a dark room. They've learned how to make the paper necessary for pictures. They know how to mix the chemicals. Like, it's kind of hard to imagine
that. They know how to harvest the chemicals.
Yes, exactly. And that, honestly, if I were to change anything, and I know there's probably some sort of narrative reason and whatever, the first thing we see the apes talking about is them all taking a picture together and laughing. I would have done something a little more dramatic. Just a little. Just a smidge. Because I get it's funny and it quote-unquote humanizes them. But we go right from apes riding horses and apes hunting humans to apes laughing and taking pictures. And the first thing we hear them do is laugh and say smile. The first word spoken by an ape is smile. I would have done something just a little more dramatic. Just a little.
I see what you're saying. I thought that scene was pretty effective for making the statement it was trying to make.
I knew you would, because like I said, I know there's something narratively important about it. But
yeah, it's it's intentionally making that connection to humans hunting for sport.
I know.
And then at the end, it shows that man is the only one that hunts for sport. But the very first thing we see the apes doing is hunting for sport. And I think that drives the irony pretty clearly. It not only in the beginning when you first watch it, it's like, hey, this is what humans do. Isn't it kind of messed up? And then, like, at the end of the film, it makes the whole society a touch ironic because,
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, maybe they have some sort of quote unquote holy mandate to keep man's population at a minimum, right? But the picture where they had bodies and they were it's clearly a trophy picture,
Right.
right? Like that's making a statement.
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a little bit of a tone shift because it is kind of humorous to see them doing that. And so far we've had like a high budget Twilight Zone episode, which is kind of spooky, kind of mysterious. And like when they're going through the canyon and the savage humans are up on the ledge, that classic they're being watched and they don't know it, then the apes are there on horseback. One of our guys has been shot, another has been injured, we don't know where the third one is. Like if one of the gorillas came out on the horse and just pointed out over the field and yelled "get them," then you have that you still have that kind of humorous moment. It's just the tone shift is a little bit drastic.
It is kind of harsh.
It's a
It
little,
goes
just a
from
little.
this huge dramatic scene where like multiple people die,
Mhm.
everyone is running and trying to survive. It's
Right.
total chaos, and then to go to like this almost humorous moment
Yes,
where you don't expect it and it's kind of absurd and you end up
Yeah.
laughing at it a little bit. I can see how that
it's
could
a
have been
statement.
bridged better.
Yeah, it's a statement, but it's a statement made in levity, and I just think it could have been played with a little bit more, just with a simple having a gorilla say something while hunting to add to that. Oh my gosh! Not only do they ride horses, but they talk. Like that could have been cool, but otherwise, I love this movie. I love this movie so much. It's so great.
Yeah,
It's a classic.
that's good. That's good. I think I knew the twist was coming. Like I know what the final shot of the film is going in. But I liked Taylor's reaction to
Yes.
it. I hadn't really
Of course.
known because like Taylor actually starts the film being like this cynical person who's like, man kind of sucks and I don't like living on Earth with people
Yeah.
because people are lame and they do terrible things to each other and they need to learn their lessons. And then he has to go through this film not necessarily as a symbol or representative for man, but kind of like defending man a little bit. Like, hey, I know man kind of did a bunch of stuff, but like I'm a real sentient person and I don't need to be treated like an animal. Please
Right.
don't like neuter me.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the film, once he's won, he's made his point, he's a sentient person worthy of respect. He turns the corner and his people are responsible for the destruction of the earth. And everything bad he believed about man is true. And that is a bummer way to end the film. And his reaction is very appropriate to it, I feel.
Yeah. And that is a real gut punch for like the ending of the movie. Like it's one of those movies I wish I could go back and watch when it came out and know nothing going in, you know? All the effect.
Honestly, even more so than Star Wars, like the big twist in Star Wars. Like,
absolutely.
It's impactful, sure, but I feel like the twist in this one narratively is just so well woven.
The impact is different. I'm sure that's movie blasphemy to say anything bad about the twist in Star Wars, but it's like that really only affects Luke. And then we find out later when it's changed and written, that affects Leia too. But like, this is different, man. This is different. And I love it.
That's good.
I'd say that's the first one. It's our first in the marathon. So we still don't have a closing for this one. Tis it a whale?
Catch you later.
Well, okay, first. Tis a whale?
Tis a whale.
Tis a whale. Absolutely tis a whale. Okay. Now we can end.